Democrats struggle with their identity now as a party post-election. We'll find out if they're still clinging to that open border policy.
Why are you talking about an identity crisis? The Republican conference is filled with marauding bands of individuals who can't stand each other. And Democrats, as far as I can tell, are unified in our determination to make life better for the American people.
Marauding bands. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries hitting back yesterday after Speaker Mike Johnson accused Democrats of struggling with party identity after the 2024 election, not really knowing what it is. Meanwhile, NBC News has exclusive reporting that the incoming Trump administration is actively considering carrying out a high-profile raid targeting undocumented immigrants in the D.C. area. 3 people familiar with the discussions reveal the raid could take place within days of Trump taking office to send a message. Joining us now, one of the reporters who broke the story, NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. Julia, good morning. So what more can you tell us about what the Trump team's considering here?
Well, Willie, of course, nothing is final yet, but we know that they're in discussions to try to figure out what resources they have to carry out workplace raids in the D.C. area. That could be in Maryland, D.C. proper, or in Northern Virginia. They could target a number of sectors. They're looking at things like agriculture, hospitality, and healthcare. This is to carry out what would be a shock and awe first operation, and it could be done, Willie, as soon as the inauguration day. This is because, of course, the president campaigned on making the incoming president campaigned on making this the largest deportation operation in American history, and he wants something to show for it when he comes into office. But workplace raids are historically very expensive and logistically difficult. They take a long time to plan, so that when ICE barges into a workplace and starts arresting people who they suspect to be living and working in the U.S. illegally, they know exactly who they're arresting and they don't make mistakes. So some current officials I've spoken to say they actually worry about the risk here if they try to take an action like this too early.
So, Julia, we've heard from Tom Homan, who is going to be Trump's border czar or immigration czar, whatever the title is exactly, who has said we are going to target criminals, hardened criminals first, that it's going to be a very difficult task to deport, as Donald Trump has promised, some 11 million people here illegally. But how does that work exactly? What does that look like as a practical question?
Well, Willie, I think this reporting shows that they can't only target, they can only arrest the people who are the biggest threats. If they're looking at workplace raids, for example, most of the people who would be working in those places wouldn't be these hardened criminals that they want to go after. And if they're going to do a big sweep like that, of course they're going to be picking up people who have committed no other crime other than being in this country and working here without authorization. These could be families. There could be fathers who are deported while their children are at school when you're talking about a workplace raid. Now, we do know that there are over 400,000 people on ICE's non-detained docket. That means they're at large in the United States. Some of them could be serving time in prison who do have criminal convictions of some kind. So obviously they would want to start looking at that population. There are also people who already have final orders of deportation. They've exhausted all of their remedies for asylum or any other kind of benefit, and they were told by a judge to leave the country. That's who they want to target. But this kind of discussion really illuminates the fact that there's also a very strong voice within the incoming administration to say, cast the net as wide as you can and boost those deportation numbers, Willie.
Yeah, this was a key promise of Donald Trump during the campaign. It looks like he wants to deliver on it right away. Julia, you talked to the current ICE director about the Biden administration's handling of the immigration issue. What did he tell you?
Yeah, Willie, this was a really surprising and candid interview. This is outgoing acting ICE Director P.J. Lechleitner, who sat down with me and told me about some of the frustrations. He thinks that the current administration could have been more transparent and forthcoming on the immigration issue, and frankly, that Biden may have taken action too late to solve the border crisis. This is someone who's been with DHS since its inception. He's a 30-year career in law enforcement, served Republicans and Democrats. I think some of his remarks here are really enlightening. Take a listen. We saw millions of immigrants come across the border, and I know you're not focused on the border, but you're focused on the ramifications.
We're related to it.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of that came down. Those numbers drastically fell, especially starting in June when the new executive action went into place. Do you think that Biden should have taken that action earlier?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely, yes, he should have. The administration should have taken that action earlier, and I think the career people in DHS would have liked that, and all of us in DHS, quite frankly. I don't know if anybody in DHS wouldn't have wanted that earlier. Maybe there's some counselors here or there that don't like this kind of stuff, but law enforcement is always going to be on that side where we want, some tighter controls. Because for a while there, you remember, it was 10,000 plus.
Biden had an exit interview this week where he was asked about his regrets, and he did not mention the border. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me, but it's unfortunate because I think we could have done more.
What specifically?
We could have put more resources to it, either at CBP and for the border itself and with ICE. And we could have went and tried to get more of these individuals who are on the non-detained docket. And we could have detained more people, and we could have removed more people. And I think we could use more resources and support. And we could have done that in the last, 4 years.
Is it possible to increase your number of deportations under your current resources?
Under our current resources, no. Because we're basically we're burnt, like I mentioned before, we're burning hot. We're at maximum resource capacity. At this point, we're going to need more money and resources to increase. And with more money and resources, we can increase detention. We can increase removal operations. Listen, there's still a whole immigration process, so people have to go through and you go through and get some benefit that comes out of it, and asylum, you name it, or you're ordered removed, and it has you to go through the immigration proceedings and go through there. But with more resources, with more money, we can do more.
So a very candid conversation. We should say that was Leck Leitner speaking from his own opinions. That's not the view of this administration, and we're reaching out to the White House for comment. But what this shows is that, for a lot of people who are career DHS, there was some frustration and really a thinking that they were doing a lot of work that wasn't being recognized because, at least in Leck Leitner's opinion, the Biden administration wasn't doing more. And also to talk about it, and also when you talk about those resources, that's when he's looking at a new administration who's promising mass deportations. He says unless they have more money, it's really not possible.
What a fascinating interview, because you have an ICE director saying now publicly to you, Julia, what we've heard privately from them for several years. NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. Julia, thanks so much for bringing it to us. We appreciate it.